Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're sitting down with a company that you definitely know well by now, Victory Square Technology, which, as a reminder, trades in Canada with the symbol VST.CN. In the US, VSQTF. We are sitting down with the one and only Shaf. Shaf, thanks so much for coming in again.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Let's get right into it. So we've been cruising the forums, speaking with investors, and there's a few questions coming up again. So let's jump right into it. So we've discussed an uplisting to a big board exchange, and given the fundamentals of your company, how you've grown, I think it's not too much of a stretch to say you should probably be meeting some of those criteria. So can we talk about what is the process of uplisting? What is the timeline like? Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we've been very hyper focused on, kind of a couple of things, spinning out our existing assets. So getting, game on and immersive, public on their own, building new IP, kind of adding new assets and portfolio companies into the mix. So the uplist, which has been, a focus of ours, it's kind of been put to the side just in the time for the time being while we, ensure we get those items done. From a step-by-step basis, the TSX Big Board will be, is what we've already kind of started the process for VST. We meet the majority of the criteria. There is one criteria that, it's kind of a variable that we can control, which is to do a financing or sponsored financing of, I think, a minimum of $10 million. So this is something that I think, when we see the, the share price trading at a point where which we feel is more, closer to our true value, we would, potentially, access that. And that would really be kind of the last criteria that we'd need to list on the TSX Big Board. So I think we would start there, focus on that first, and then the NASDAQ Big Board in the US would come, after we've kind of gotten our feet wet on the TSX Big Board. So it is a focus. The TSX Big Board uplisting is something we've already kind of started the process on. And, realistically, from a timeline perspective, I would estimate, Q1 or Q2 of next year, for that. The thing though is it could happen at any, any time. And then the NASDAQ, I think, would be, farther along the line.
Yep, that makes sense. So in terms of company valuation, given the fact that VST is comprised of a growing number of portfolio companies, obviously valuation can be one of the trickier, things to tackle. So when we're talking about net asset value, that seems to be kind of a common barometer of valuation. So in terms of, seeing perhaps an audited net asset value, would that be something that we could expect in the future?
So the best way to answer that question is kind of in a couple of parts. One is, from an auditor perspective, we fall under IFRS accounting rules. So the auditors will always look at our assets based on specific rules. So for example, we have companies like Hydrate, Copilot, Draft Label, just to mention a couple, where because our ownership is above a certain amount, which is over 20%, and we have some sort of controlling, controlling piece and involvement in those businesses, the auditors will always account for it based on cost accounting. So the true value will never be unlocked from an audit by our auditors on those assets as they currently stand. But if we do fall under, that 20%, I think it may be 17 to 20%, there's some sort of threshold there, and we're not on the board or we're not having a controlling interest, at that time, from an audit perspective, that value will come out. However, there are a couple of things we're looking at. One is analyst coverage. So as analysts start to cover the VST story, they'll look under the hood and do kind of their own independent NAV analysis and publish it. We know that there's some research coverage being initiated that should come out in the fall, and we think that once the first one comes out, then we think it'll be kind of a domino effect, after that. But the other part is, so how we come up with our NAV. So our NAV is made up of a couple of different figures. One is what the most recent investment in a portfolio company is. So we take that, we use that as a good barometer for calculating our own NAV. The second is what the fair market value of a company. So in some of these cases, these private companies are growing significantly. In the case of Copilot, they're tracking to end this year with 25 million in ARR. They're a SaaS company, so we're able to look at fair market values to be able to determine kind of a value there. So from an audit perspective, there are very strict rules, and I think from an audit perspective, until we go under that 18 to 20% kind of threshold and no controlling interest, then that value will come out from an audit perspective. But alternatively, from an analyst perspective, they're going to be evaluating it and being able to publish it from an independent perspective. So investors can look out for that. But to know that our NAV is there's a very specific and sophisticated calculation model to identify those numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and you already led into my next question perfectly. I was going to ask you about analyst coverage. So something, yeah, we've touched on in the past, and you're saying now, did you say possibly in the fall we may start to see something come out?
Yeah, so I would anticipate seeing analyst coverage in the fall. So anywhere between September and November, because we've had analysts reach out for information. So I would expect that, and I think once the first coverage comes out, I think you'll see a domino effect after that. So internally, we're anticipating, a major report coming out anywhere between September and November of this year. And once that comes out, we think there'll be a domino effect of coverage in Q1 and Q2 of next year.
Okay, that's great. So I guess as part of that process, they'll probably do some sort of diligence related to the NAV or their own interpretation of how they'd value that. So that would probably accomplish exactly what we're looking for and give investors something to point to.
Absolutely. So they'll do an analysis of VST's business model. They'll look at the portfolio companies under the hood and provide, like you mentioned, a third-party kind of independent value on those. And the third thing they'll do, which is really key, which we don't talk much about, is VST as an allocator of capital. So when you look at the amount of cash that we've invested into building this portfolio to what the value is today, you're looking at almost a 9 to 10x return on capital over that period of time. And so that's another metric and KPI that we're looking forward to having a third party analyst cover that, because our whole model is being able to find these diamonds in a rough, spend the time building and growing them and creating exponential value. So that KPI and having an analyst cover that is going to be a really good data point for investors to look out for.
Excellent, yeah. And here's something fun we always like to talk about: upcoming spinoffs. We've had a lot of action lately. Let's look at the portfolio. What would where are we at in terms of the pipeline? What's coming next in terms of a spinoff, and roughly, can you give us any kind of timeline?
Yeah. So last year, Fans was spun out. This year, we've had 3 major kind of spin-offs to date. 2 were public listings, so Game On, which was in June 1st, Immersive Tech, which is ticker VRAR, which will be very, very shortly. And we
Love
had
that ticker, by the way.
Yeah,
great ticker.
We had the sale of an asset, which we sold earlier, I think in Q1 or Q2, for $6 million. So those are 3. Last year we had 1 major event. This year we've had 3 so far. In the pipeline, so we have Stardust Solar, which is in the pipeline for which we're preparing for list. Mm-hmm. I don't want to tie to a date. We're anticipating Q4 2021, but with delays that could be pushed into Q1 of next year. We also have Turnium, which I think they're preparing for Q1 of next year. And Copilot, which they're anticipating for Q1 or Q2 of next year. So those are 3 in the pipeline that I would say that are on deck. And then we have 2 other projects that are gaining momentum that we might expedite. So we've had a lot of traction in our digital health space, specifically around Hydrate as an example. And so we might expedite that into a transaction, in the next couple of quarters, as well as. I think in our Q2 filings there was a mention of the CQT token. So it's no secret to anyone that's followed our story. We were early pioneers in the blockchain crypto Web3 space. And we're working on a project right now, which we've been piloting, which is getting a lot of traction around altcoins. So there's a really exciting project that we're working on with thought leaders in that space, which is around our portfolio company Covalent, that we're looking at. So I think those two, depending on what happens, we might expedite us, spinning off or getting into some sort of transaction over the next couple of quarters.
You guys do not slow down. That's for sure.
We can't stop. There's too much momentum, going on right now.
Yeah, that's exciting. And so in terms of kind of future investments, acquisitions, companies to bring under the umbrella, we've discussed a bunch of different areas that you're looking at. Are there any specific industries that really have your attention right now?
So we focus on kind of 4 areas: next generation internet, digital health, the climate space, climate change, the circular economy, and the creator economy. So, and now we've got a lot of really good anchor portfolio companies in these categories. So if I had to look kind of forward to what we would add on there, within the next generation internet space, I think we're going deeper into Web3, crypto, and cybersecurity. So those are some of the areas and that we're incubating kind of internally within the next generation internet category, given that we've already got such a strong portfolio there. On the digital health side, the focus there is really around our first mover advantage in Brazil. So we have boots on the ground through VSH. They've established relationships with government, states in Brazil, hospitals, medical professionals, distributors, retailers. So what we're looking, there to kind of build around is using that kind of first mover advantage and that distribution kind of channel we have for the growth of our diagnostic tests and to expand a telehealth business in Brazil. So when you look at the U.S. market or the Canadian market for that matter, you'll see names like Roman, Everlywell, Teladoc, or Well Health here in Canada. That have grown significantly. We believe that we have a really big competitive advantage in Brazil. So within digital health, we really want to leverage that first mover advantage and build up the profile there. Then around the climate and climate and circular economy space, this is a space that I think we're going to again spend more time into it. Not only because it's a massive environmental issue and an emergency, but it's also a very big economic opportunity as well. So we've been incubating and looking at assets in that space. We recently brought in a company called Stardust Solar in that space. And then the fourth is the creator economy. So, we announced, follow-on investment in a portfolio company called Creator.co. And we're spending a lot of time around the creator space and building some really, really unique projects around social tokens, creator coins within that in that ecosystem. So I'd say we know who we are and we know what we're good at. We've got anchors in those 4 categories that we focus on, but those are kind of where in each one we're going a bit deeper into.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, this was an excellent interview, but I wanted to kind of open it up. Is there anything you'd like to kind of final thoughts to your investor audience who might be watching? Something you feel like they should know, something noteworthy? I'll kind of just give you the floor.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that are great to end with, one, so that, people that may be new to the story is, we have over 20 portfolio companies in key sectors. So investors that invest in VST are not getting a one-trick pony. They're getting, exceptional companies that are covering spaces like digital health, gaming, esports, crypto, virtual and augmented reality, the creator economy, green tech. These deals are coming from all over the world. So this is the other thing about our portfolio. They aren't North American based, they're global. So these are, brilliant minds from all over that we're able to tap into because of our access to these 80 accelerators in these markets. As a company, we've got a very healthy balance sheet. We recently released our Q2s. So we've had 6 consecutive quarters of positive net income and earnings per share, and cash in the till and a low burn. So this is a company that's in a very, very good, good position. Also, within our business model, last year was a big inflection point for us, and mentioned fans being spun out. This year, we've already had 3 major transactions with, potential 4th in Q4. where we have the ability to self-finance our growth. So, investors don't necessarily need to worry about a company running out of capital or not being able to be aggressive or on the offense or being at the mercy of dilution, at a weak share price. So very, very healthy kind of foundation and balance sheet. And I think, like we talked about a bit earlier, there's a lot of catalysts. So, upcoming spin-outs of Stardust Solar, Ternium, Copilot, and then some of those other companies like Hydrate that are kind of under the hood that are kind of accelerating fast. So a lot of catalysts and subsequent events. And I think what I'd ask all investors to do is, just follow the story and look back. And one of the biggest things we as a management team are proud of is that we do what we say we're going to do. So if you look at our corporate updates and you look at what we have as an outlook, we've been able to execute on those items. So I think just ending with that, and it's a Friday, so I hope everyone has a great weekend and a happy Labor Day weekend.
Awesome. Well, always a pleasure. And for those of you watching, do not hesitate. Reach out to us anytime. We're always excited to talk about this company and answer your questions. And again, for new shareholders, potentially, in Canada, we are trading under the symbol VST.CN, in the US, VSQTF. And I honestly can't wait to have another interview and do this again. So thanks again, Shaf.
Thanks, Kevin. Cheers.